I'm ready, my friend of my Art Smith. Dolly House, mash up. I say, baby, things not right now, you see. So make we talk. Well, I don't know why we must fight. Lately, baby, things ain't right. I just wanna hold you so tight. Freak you, girl, until morning light. You wanna know why I drink so much? All these late nights in these clubs. It's cause I miss your tender touch. Baby girl, we should be making love. Of lately, baby, you and me been moving crazy. But you my world, my girl, your love has saved me. No other love, no other girl, no other lady could take the place of you, my boo dog, don't forsake me. Baby girl, don't you know that I'm the one that give you my love just because I call my heart, you want that. Girl, you know so I'm the only one you want that. Don't you give away my love, girl. I don't know why we must fight. Lately, baby, things ain't right. I just wanna hold you so tight. Freak you, girl, until morning light. You wanna know why I drink so much? All these late nights in these clubs. It's cause I miss your tender touch. Baby girl, we should be making love. It gets so bad that you and me no longer floss. Now what's the flick, no make no flex, so baby, what's the cause? Girl, without you in my life, I'd be very lost. Go ahead, argue with me, I will make it pass. Girl, you know so we connect, your feelings scammers. See it right up on your face, you know we must last. We gonna make it, right now you cannot take it. You're calling me a turbo, baby girl, you are my hot sauce. I don't know why we must fight. Lately, baby, things ain't right. I just wanna hold you so tight. Freak you, girl, until morning light. You wanna know why I drink so much? All these late nights in these clubs. It's cause I miss your tender touch. Baby girl, we should be making love. Girl, when I think about it, the years that we've devoted, I've been the best of my life, I don't know what I'd do without it. Sometimes they look at me clouded, but girl, nobody doubt it. And if there's still a doubt up in your brain, then just deload it. I tell you, baby girl, upon the search, you love, we found it. And up the river life together, girl, we gonna float it. You know your dad is home, I'm the king, you the queen. On the throne together we sit, we not go crowded. I don't know why we must fight. Lately, baby, things ain't right. I just wanna hold you so tight. Freak you, girl, until morning light. You wanna know why I drink so much? All these late nights in these clubs. It's cause I miss your tender touch. Baby girl, we should be making love.